Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce and in partnership with TD Canada Trust, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this important gathering which brings together stakeholders from across Niagara who are all interested and have a vested interest in Niagara's economy. And a very special welcome to our distinguished guest, the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sports, Tourism, Culture, Industries. It is so wonderful to have you with us. And it is also my honor to acknowledge Niagara's elected officials who are with us today. We have MPP for Niagara West, Sam Oosterhoff. We have Mayor Diodati for Niagara Falls, Mayor Kevin Gibson for Wainfleet, along with a number of other municipally elected officials from all across Niagara. I wanted to thank you personally and on behalf of the board for your commitment to Niagara. My name is Mtcc and I'm the CEO of the GNCC. Let us start out by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection with this place. And we also recognize the contributions of Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous people, both in shaping and strengthening the region, in particular our province, our country as a whole. I would also like to take a moment to express our solidarity with the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian business community. Canada has the most Ukrainians outside of the Ukraine and Russia, and we're all affected by what happens, especially with those who have very close ties with the community. I wanted to also just give you a brief overview of the format. We're going to start out with a keynote address by the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, and which is followed by a fireside chat, which actually reflects some of the questions and comments that you have brought forward to us. And our closing remarks will be made by Sam Oosterhoff. Please note that today's event is recorded, so it's kind of a hybrid format of it, and will be available on our website, YouTube channel, and also will be shared on all of our social media afterwards. But before handing the mic off, it is also my privilege to thank Mr. Dino DiCienzo for hosting today's dialogue with Mr. MacLeod. This facility is one of the many Niagara Falls accommodation and entertainment properties owned and operated by his family. Thank you for enriching the tourism industry in Niagara so tremendously with your investment. Thank you. And now for the introduction of our very special guest, over to our title sponsor, TD Canada Trust, and we have with us Andrew Dotto, Manager of Commercial Services at TD Commercial Banking. Andrew, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Dotto, and I'm happy to serve as Manager, Commercial Services for TD Niagara Commercial Banking. At TD, we are proud of our association with the Chamber, given its central role it plays in coordinating economic activity in the Niagara Peninsula. Our team of 10 bankers, located in downtown St. Catharines, are specifically dedicated to Niagara. It's this localized approach that we believe makes a difference in servicing communities and business owners. It's been a difficult couple of years, especially in the hospitality and tourism industry, and we are proud of how TD has navigated and played a central role in supporting businesses. Now please join me in welcoming Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, Culture, Industries, the Honourable Lisa MacLeod.
See if I can get this. I'm a bit shorter than everybody else. Thanks everyone for joining us here today. It's a real pleasure, and thank you for the kind introduction. Actually, thank you also for the acknowledgement of the people of Ukraine. I'll just start off by saying this: the youngest member of my staff, his parents right now are in a bomb shelter. His dad, who's in his 50s, is fighting on behalf of their country, and his 78-year-old grandfather has enlisted. And I'll say this, on Saturday night, well, I will say this before, when the invasion first started, I spoke with April Jeffs and David Adames from the Niagara Parks Commission, which is one of our agencies, and we asked on behalf of the Premier if we could light the falls up blue and yellow, and which we did, and we were very proud to do that. But for my daughter's 12th birthday, she actually won, or 17th birthday on the 12th, She actually went down to the falls and lit them blue and yellow for Pavlo and for all the people of Ukraine. So thank you for that. I do appreciate that. I want to acknowledge Dino and his family and the great contributions that they've had, not only here in Niagara, but they're also very present in Muskoka, which is another tourism destination in the province of Ontario. And their commitment to excellence and hospitality is really very important, not only to this region, but to the entire province. So Dino, thank you so much for always being a gracious host to me, to my team, to the Premier, and to all of the folks here in Niagara. And to Sam and to Jim, my colleagues and friends who tell me what's going on in Niagara, whether I want to hear it or not. I want to say thanks to you, Pluto and Samuel. It's always a real pleasure to be here with both of you, and so many friends in the room, and so many people who have gone through so much with me over the past 2 years. If you can believe it, on March 13th, 2020, we were around my boardroom table at the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, and I was on a call with David Adames and the other 18 agencies and attractions. And as we sat around that table and COVID was coming into Canada, we had to make a decision. Were we going to remain open for the March break, or were we going to close and see what is going to happen with this pandemic? And there were a variety of different views around the table. I'll never forget, it was 11:10 on a Friday, March the 13th, 2020. And as we were going through the table between the Convention Centre in Ottawa, which is an agency of ours, the Shaw Centre, who wanted to continue with their programming, and also the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, which is another, that wanted to continue their programming. I remember others like the Science Centre were wondering, is it appropriate to continue to have children's programming? And as we hit 11:10, on that Friday morning, I got word while we were on that call that none of us had a choice, that Ontario would be going into a state of emergency because we had just seen a global pandemic declared. And our 18 agencies and attractions, which range from the Niagara Parks Commission to the St. Lawrence Parks Commission to the Science Centre in Toronto, to the Science North, to the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, to the Shaw Centre, to the Royal Botanical Gardens, to Fort William Historical Park, to the Discovery Harbour and St. Marie among the Hurons, to the McMichael Art Gallery, the AGO, and the ROM. Some of the best known entities in the entire world in heritage, sport, tourism, and culture. And they were shut down. They were synonymous with what it means to be an Ontarian. Synonymous to what it means to have a spectacular double bottom line, as I often say. They were the forward-facing, iconic institutions that show people from around the world that we're open for visitors and we're open for business. They remind us as Ontarians who we are. They're part of our cultural fabric. But at the same time, they drive a spectacular double bottom line in the sense that they create $75 billion in economic activity. And all that was gone on the 13th of March, 2020. And I couldn't think of a place that I wanted to be more with my daughter, my nephew from Nova Scotia, and my sister. As my daughter turned 17, my sister turned, I'm not going to tell you how old, and and she's not even here. She's on Clifton Hill. And my nephew to be here and to actually see our premier tourism destination, our premier leisure destination, all of Canada, back open. And we did that on a 2-year anniversary. And so I want to be here as a message of hope, and I want to be here as a message of thinking big, and I want to be here with a message of what we can achieve together through the province of Ontario and the business leaders here in this community, as well as our agency, the Niagara Parks Commission. And I want to do this, I want to start with the eyes of my nephew, who's 15 years old, coming from New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. I asked Aidan last night before I came here, because I said, I want to talk a little bit about you in my speech, honey, because you've been in full-out overload. I said, what's your favorite part of being here in Niagara? And he said the falls. And I can tell you, he's slept. Well, he hasn't slept in 2 days. He has literally looked at the falls for 2 days and 2 nights straight, and is mesmerized by the illumination in the evening. He is mesmerized by the mist when we drive by or walk by it, and he's mesmerized in the day just at how exquisite they truly are. The second thing he was captivated by, and Joel knows this because he got to see it with his own 2 eyes, but Aiden was captivated by Clifton Hill. And he made me drive up and down it 10 times when we first got here. He was so excited, he told me he wanted to do everything. And so I dropped him off there earlier today with my sister, God love her, who, again, I'm not going to tell her age, but she's going to double her age by today probably, and my daughter. And they loved it. It was so magical. It was, for them, it was like they were going to Disney World or Universal, and they couldn't believe it existed right here in Canada. The third was the hotel. They love the hospitality here, but they love going to the pool. They love seeing the people. And I can tell you, on the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic, the hotel on Saturday, and Dino can tell you, any hotelier here is going to be able to tell you, that it was like everyone has decided to come to Niagara Falls in the entire world. And the lineups have been long to get into the hotels, but it was nice to stay overnight somewhere. But I got to tell you something. His favorite part of Niagara were the people. And that's a compliment coming from a kid from Nova Scotia, where you're growing up to teach about charity and kindness and giving and a neighbor helping a neighbor. And there isn't a lot of government, so big government doesn't exist. Everything is done by charity, and you get out there and you do things. That's how we grew up. And that's what is ingrained in my nephew. And his favorite part about Niagara was the hospitality of the people here. And I think you should be very proud of that, because that's out of the eyes and the mouth of a 15-year-old boy who was only ever here once before at 2 years old. So I want to give a lot of credit to a lot of people in this room, but more importantly to your staff, the people on the front line, who have for 2 years been either underemployed or unemployed. And when they finally got back to work, have to deal with a number of people that are just looking for that experience that they have craved for 2 years, and you don't have enough staff. So on my behalf, today when you go back to your offices, whether you're working for a chamber of commerce or you're working for a hotel or a restaurant, for a tourism attraction at your municipality, please thank your staff, because they are what makes this place the most unique in the world. And I want to talk a little bit about that. Many of you know the Premier has asked me to spend a great deal of time and attention on how we can make Niagara an even bigger tourism destination post-pandemic. And without getting into details on what that might mean, I have to say I have spent some time here doing a lot of roundtables. I do connect with most of you on a weekly basis in order to find out what's going on in the ground. And I want to talk about some of the opportunities. I often hear about Vegas North. We've got a couple of casinos, and I think that's incredible. And I think that there's a role that gaming can play with the OLG, and I know our new chair of the OLG, Jim Warren, will be down here to talk about how we can best enhance and improve that. I often hear about Napa North, and Del, you know, I really enjoy your wine region. Stop. But I do. I think we've got an excellent microclimate here, and I think we have an incredible product that should be world renowned, and we need to invest in that. And that's why I'll continue to work with our craft associations, not only the wineries, but the distilleries and the cideries and the breweries, as well as our local food producers here, because I think we have an opportunity to take things to the next level. And so that's important. You're Gettysburg North. You're actually the front line of protecting this country against an invasion. You're also the place where hydroelectric power got its name. You have an incredible role in Black history in this country. You have a great story and a great history to tell. You're Nashville North. We've just recently got the designation for from Canadian Live Music Association and Music Canada to be Music City in Ontario, and that was no small feat. But you have all of the assets. You're Virginia Beach North. You have incredible beaches. You know, I'm going to tell you, Patrick Harris will be able to tell you all of the beaches and all the fun hot spots, right, Patrick?
That's right.
Broadway North, my buddy Tim, you're doing incredible work at the Shaw. You're world renowned. You're going to come out of this pandemic stronger with a bigger brand. And you know, Noel, you are Orlando North, because your convention center offers not only business but leisure. So you've got it all. And so I encourage all of you to start building on all of that together. You have a vast region, and I'm going to ask you to start today to collaborate more than you've ever collaborated before. You know, Toronto and Ottawa, we have classic rivalries as the provincial capital and where I live, the nation's capital. But throughout the pandemic, they decided to work together on a Friends with Benefits campaign with the City of Montreal. Oh, you don't even want to know what it's called in French. Menage. Yeah, they're cheeky. But they utilize the assets that they have, the cultural entities, the business entities, the restaurants, the culinary craft, all of that. They created this allegiance toward one another and said it's okay for you to travel in the neighboring big city, whether it's Toronto, Montreal, or Ottawa. Think about how easy it would be for you to do this in St. Catharines, in Welland, Niagara Falls, Waynflete, Thorold. You can do it quite easily. And our government has believed in you, and that's why we've made historic investments into this community. Throughout the pandemic, my ministry has flowed just over $103 million to this region. That's a lot of money for my ministry, guys. And we've done it because we believe in you as a destination. We believe in your economy. We believe in the things that you stand for and that you do. We believe in the values that you have. And that's why the Niagara Parks Commission, which has the crown jewel of our entire province, is here as the steward of this land and this water. We've been able to provide them with over $27 million in stabilization. You know, they get, at the peak season, probably 1.7 million visitors an hour. And that's incredible, and you see it almost every single day. Through our Reconnect Festival and event programming, of which Janice is probably one of my most expensive friends in this room outside of David at Dames, we've been able to provide over $3.8 million in festivals and events. And just a couple of weeks ago, you finally got to celebrate New Year's Eve. And that's amazing. And we've been able to invest in 35 events. And I've been with Sam on many occasions as we've been able to go to some of the different events in this community, not just in Niagara Falls, but throughout the rest of the area. We've invested into your RTO $14.6 million to help with product development and marketing so that we're world ready when the appropriate time, which is very soon. Through the Ontario Trillium Foundation, we have invested over $16 million to not-for-profits for sports, recreation, museums, art galleries, and other not-for-profits that are doing incredible things that make you love where you live, because that's important too. And through the Ontario Arts Council, we have invested $4.9 million, and of course Tim has been a recipient of that. But I'm really excited because we've also announced $49 million, and I think you've probably already spent it, for the upcoming Canada Games. And I'm really excited about the upcoming Canada Games. So here today, if you're listening, I'm going to give you another $1.1 million in order to support the games and make sure that they are the most successful and safe games in the history of Canada. That's new money, Samuel.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good that he's my Queen's Park son, because he always knows where Mummy has the cash in the cushions. Is this being live broadcast, by the way? But it is going to be an incredible games, and if I have the great fortune of being returned as an MPP and our government is returned, my hope is that I do get to spend at least another year in this portfolio to guide the games forward and to support you in the best way I possibly can. But at the same time, I have made an invitation to all of the ministers of sport, federally, provincially, and territorially, to come here for a federal, provincial, territorial meeting during the games, so you will have the most powerful leaders in sport in the country right here in Niagara region during those games. And so just like that spirit of Team Niagara that you're putting forward with Canada 2022, I ask that you continue to do that as a region on everything else: heritage, sport, tourism, culture, transportation, housing, all of that leadership, because none of you in your own municipalities or your own destination marketing organizations or your own chambers of commerce or BIAs are actually competitors like Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa aren't. And if you think that you want to be Napa North or Nashville North or I don't know, Broadway North or Virginia Beach North or Orlando North. The reality is they're never going to be Niagara. They really will never be Niagara North or South. You've got it all. And you have to understand that through that collaboration will come an abundance. It will benefit all of you as business owners. It will benefit all of your workers, and it will benefit all of the people that live here. You need a strong, united voice that thinks big, that looks at reasons of why we can do something rather than reasons we can't do something. Because all of the things that my nephew Aiden sees are things that I hope you all see. One of the greatest places to live, work, and play and visit in all of the world. The things that you have here can't be replicated, but they can be leveraged for further opportunities, whether that's growing local music scene or the theater scene, whether it's the good food, the good wine, the good beer, the good cider, yes, and the occasional good distilled products, Jim. Your beaches, your place in history, the savvy entrepreneurs that are here. You're in a class of your own. And so my commitment to you on behalf of the Premier Ford and our government as Progressive Conservatives, working of course with my colleague Sam Oosterhoff, is if we're re-elected, our commitment to Niagara will only be strengthened. And so I ask that you all consider that in the next couple of months, where we can be rather than where we are. You know, there was a young man that grew up not too far from here, about an hour and a bit, called Wayne Gretzky, and he always said, don't go to where the puck is, go to where the puck is going. And I'm confident that with the bright minds in this region, and particularly in this room, you'll be able to do that. Thanks, everyone.
And now we're going to move over to our fireside chat, or false chat. For over 30 years, Noel Buckley has worked in the Canadian tourism and hospitality industry, serving in progressively more responsible roles. He served as president of Niagara Falls Tourism, senior director of business development at Niagara Fallsview Casino, president and CEO of Ottawa Tourism, and in his current role as president and general manager of the Niagara Falls Convention Centre. Noel was the first chair of Destination Ontario's U.S. Leisure Committee, vice chair of Destinations Canada's U.S. Committee, board member of Tourism Industry Association of Canada, and board member of Tourism Industry Association of Canada. He has been awarded the Diamond Jubilee Medal by Queen Elizabeth for his contributions to tourism, and we're proud to have him as the incoming chair of the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, Noel Buckley.
Thank you very much, Vishka, and Minister, thank you. I mean, I was going to say how much you've meant to Niagara and the incredible job you've done, and that you're no stranger to Niagara, but I don't have to say that, because you could come in here and name people all over the room, know what they do, know what they've contributed, and I suggest you could probably name more people in the room than some of us here could. So it just shows and illustrates your commitment to this region, to this destination, and to the interest you've taken in learning about us. So before we begin, thank you very, very much, Minister. I'd also like to thank Michigan, the GNCC, for holding an in-person event. I'm in that business, and and the minister's heard this from me, so I know you're going to get bored by it, but I think it's incredibly important that those of us that have the opportunity to set an example, that once we've told people it's okay to meet in person, that once we've told people we're reopening, that we allow our own people, allow our own organizations, allow our own government people to travel, to attend meetings, to go to meetings, to attend in-person events, to go to a show at a theater. It's incredibly important. So, Mishka, thank you for holding an in-person event. And I guess this is really supposed to be a quote-unquote fireside chat. I have no role.
Instead of the fire, we have the falls.
That's exactly what I wrote down, Minister. I said it's a fall-side chat, not a fireside chat. So we're going to do that. We'll have a little fall-side chat, and I have no real role here other than to relay some of the questions that you have all asked. So with that being said...
So no, I have a set of rules myself.
Oh, you didn't tell me that before.
No, I didn't. But I'm only going to answer the easy ones. Sam's going to answer the tough ones.
Okay, this first one you can handle. This first one.
Oh no! Shut the door! Jim Bradley's just walked in.
It's the regional chair. These came from people in the room and from people that have been solicited online from the chamber. Businesses in your portfolio have seen a very uneven recovery from the pandemic. Some are doing well, others are struggling. As the government transitions to a more focused and targeted approach, can you summarize what you are considering for the future?
Yeah, we'll have a budget coming forward not too long from now, and so we will be talking about some of those targeted measures, whether it's through my ministry or through others. And you're right, it's been uneven, and it's been uneven throughout the entire pandemic, right? Because when I look at the early days of the pandemic, we were able to keep a few of the sectors that I represent open. Obviously, animation, video gaming, interactive digital media was able, because people could do it from anywhere. And then we were able to get film and television up, but mostly because some of the great standards that we were dealing with internationally that we could adopt here. But it was tougher for Tim to have, because he needed fans and stands, and for the OHL, for example. And I'll be heading out to Hamilton tonight to the OHL game. And then, of course, our hotels, and Dino can speak more about this than me, but you guys were operating at 3% if you were open. And then even for Dino's gym, when you think about Niagara Falls compared to going up north into Muskoka, where you were able to, where people were actually feeling safer in sort of rural environments, like at the JW. So we've been really trying to focus on that. We've had some regional disparity. We've had some different disparities within each of our sectors. That's why we've rolled out over $1 billion in supports to date in our sectors, which is by far the largest of any province in the entire country. But there's still more to do. Some of the areas I really think you get a big bang for your buck are actually festivals and events. And so I'll give you, and Janice will tell you this, every dollar this ministry invests in yields 21 in return. When we took the Reconnect Festival and Event Program from $19.5 million to $50 million, that was a $1 billion return of investment into the Ontario economy at a time when we needed to get people back to work. And who are those people that we needed to get back to work? Yes, the artists. Obviously, we need to get the artists back to work. But it was also the people, developing the stage. It was the security guards that we were hiring, porta potties, fencing, the sound and lighting people. Like all of those folks who had, no ability at all to have any income, we were actually helping aid that, and in the business community, the banks were stepping up and others to support these. That's one of my favorite. The other is sport hosting. And I think, Noel and I just talked about this. Who's doing an incredible job in sport hosting? When I talk about collaboration, you should do more with Hamilton. They've had, in the last 5 months, I went to the NHL Heritage Classic last night, full stadium. Tonight they'll have about 12 or 13,000 people for the OHL playing at the same on the same ice. They just had the World Cup qualifier where the Canadian men's soccer team beat US. That was packed. And then they had the Grey Cup at the end of last year. They're punching above their weight in sport hosting, and that's an area too, which is going to fill your hotels, it's going to fill your restaurants, and it's going to bring business leaders in, because that's who's buying those box tickets, and they're going to see these areas. And I think there's a great area there in promotion, and I know that sounds weird coming from a conservative, but I actually don't look at it as a handout. I look at it as an investment, and I think whenever I can see an investment go out and a return in that economy, that to me is a big win.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely strong point you make, Minister, because often sport hosting is at times of year when we need the business, right? I mean, you look at Grey Cup in November, you look at the World Cup qualifying in soccer in the middle of, I think it was December. I mean, these are types of times when we actually could use a business in this community, so there's an opportunity there for us. Got another question.
Okay. Sam?
Although things are reopening and there's a sense that we are starting a return to normal, a great deal of tourist hesitancy remains, along with uncertainty around border crossings and international travel. You can certainly see that in this region. You don't have to look very far to see the U.S. border from here. how can we restore tourist confidence for the future, particularly as it relates to the border? And I know the border is a national issue.
Yeah, but there's also an ability for us to, as provincial tourism ministers, to speak to the federal tourism minister, because we were in a situation before Christmas where the federal government, the federal transport minister was saying one thing while we were actually on a call as federal, provincial, and territorial tourism ministers saying like we need some movement here. And so they actually have to start speaking, but we have to be advocates on your behalf to say it's time, to allow particularly our border communities to get back to business and back to visitorship. I think that you're right that there is going to be some consumer hesitancy. The ministry has been tracking this since March of 2020. Many of you have been on my webinars where I've had Daryl Bricker from Ipsos. He was the one who was able to win the RFP. We are out in the field again, looking at what those consumer behaviors were, and we like to share some of the proof points on what makes people feel comfortable. For example, we knew early days that if you were going to a hotel, there were certain things people expected when they were at the hotel. If you're at a tourism attraction, there's a level of sanitation, rigorous requirements for health and safety protocols, physical distancing. Then, what does that look like now? That's what we're really looking at. We're in the field actually right now to see what type of advice we can provide our agencies and attractions, as well as our key stakeholders. So, the key groups that we would work with on a I would say weekly basis will be the 18 agencies and attractions which are across the entire province. We have 13 regional tourism organizations across Ontario, from the east to the north to the south, west. We have a number of provincial sport organizations, 66 of which we fund, other multi-sport organizations in order to increase confidence, not only in getting people to go to an NHL game, but honestly, to put their kids back in minor sport. And that's going to be a big challenge for us too. So these are all things, when you think about where you live and why you love to live where you live and why people love to visit where you live, they're all things within this ministry. And we are a ministry, by the way, our sectors were really taken for granted before the pandemic, and I think have showcased how powerful they are to a community, but also to the economy.
Thank you, and you have done that, and you certainly...
I hope so, because I keep repeating the same things.
You have certainly carried our message well at Queen's Park, and we appreciated that. One of the areas that almost everybody in this room that owns a business or operates any sort of an organization has felt in costs that are out of control is on the insurance side of business right now. And we've had a couple questions on insurance, but is the province looking at that at all? Are we looking at any sort of a subsidy program, a regulation, a regulatory environment? I mean, there's been examples of hospitality operators that have seen, and I'm not exaggerating, 400% and 500% increases in premiums. I would assume this might be beyond the tourism industry, but is the province looking at that at all?
So you're right, it is beyond the tourism industry, and I think anybody here that might be outside of tourism, hospitality, sport, recreation, arts and culture are dealing with it as well. But it also it transcends the ministry here. But we are focused on it. It's one of the things we actually have. There's one person dedicated in the Ministry of Finance, I think, to take our calls. Derek's nodding his head. Yes, there is. So we work extremely well with Minister Bethlen Falvey's office, as well as the Attorney General, Doug Downey's office, to see how we can best fit. In many cases, they will work with banks to see how there is an offset or an ability to work with them. But it is an ongoing conversation, and it is an ongoing national problem in many sectors that will need a solution to it. But it is sort of beyond just our ministry. So I don't want to sort of give you a cop-out on that one to say it's not my fault, but we are working on it, and we are working with other people because we recognize it's going to be very difficult. Tayo's very good at saying, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, that just because we're open doesn't mean we're recovered. And so I'm often saying that as well, because I think people have to know that just because Dino might have had a good weekend and this week, there is still going to be some of those challenges with labor, insurance, hesitancy, gas prices. There's a whole lot of things going on that we're going to have to really look at in the future.
Yeah, I think so. And it sounds like it's hit the cabinet table, though, the insurance issue.
Well, it has hit several cabinet ministers' tables.
Okay.
I can't tell you what goes on in there.
No, of course.
Nice try.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of questions here. I don't think we're going to get to them all. So, Mishka, you got to give me some sort of signal when we're getting close to time, right? because there's.
Oh, listen, we can
far
go all
more-
day. My nephew wants to go on the zip line, and I've only ever done that once with the daddy. And then I also tried to do that helicopter ride, and I made it for like, I think 10 minutes. So they want to do all that fun stuff. So if we want, I'm here till 5.
You're here. I won't be. Do you think that tax credits and incentives for staycations in domestic Ontario tourism might be adjusted to reflect the higher gas prices? That came from the town of Lincoln.
Yeah, great question. So the tax credit as it is right now, it is only for accommodations, and it will only be for accommodations. We are looking at other stackable incentive with our RTOs as well as some of our other industry associations to make vacationing affordable for Ontarians this year, to get them back into travel. I can tell you, because I will go up to probably anybody, as my team will tell you, and I've asked a number of people if they knew about the staycation tax credit. I was very excited that every single person that I asked in Niagara this weekend knew about it. So I think it's working, and we're going to be doing a little bit more in the ministry over the next couple of weeks through my office to ramp up advertising for it, and then Destination Ontario is really focused on it. But what I think is important there is when you're looking at the gas prices, we're not going to do that, but we are very focused on working with the regional tourism organizations and the DMOs on finding out how to do those stackable incentives. And I know that you're doing stuff here. Janice is probably doing things as well, and certainly the Attractions Ontario are doing things.
Thank you. And in the same vein, a lot of infrastructure will need upgrading, HVAC systems, etc., better filtration. Many organizations have suggested a second round of investment in the cultural and infrastructure program to support this. Is the government considering this?
So that will be a decision by the federal government. That was their program, which Ontario was able to buy into. It was really significant. I think for over $300 million in investments, we had about $11 billion in asks. So it gives you a sense of how important a program to update your local arenas, your local art gallery, your local museum, your local library is to an actual community and to local municipalities. And I can say when I was up in Muskoka, just a couple of weeks ago, meeting with Mayor Graydon Smith, who's the head of AMO, they're big issues that they're talking about. Yes, of course they're talking about hospitals, they should be in long-term care, but they're always asking me, can you help upgrade the rink? My rink, we built the rink in 1983 under Bill Davis, and we need a new refrigeration unit. Or we built this Legion, but we need a chairlift now. Or we built this library, but it needs an elevator now. And so these are the things that we have that come directly to us. We actually don't have a capital program though in this ministry. So we were able to, through the Ontario Trillium Foundation, for COVID, be able to add, I think it was $50 million toward capital improvements. I'd like to see that, obviously, but in terms of the ISIP, that is the federal government.
Thank you.
Yeah, matter. I pass it on to Tony Baldwin.
Pass it on. Pass it up.
Call him
pass it
today.
up there. Is he in there? This didn't come from Tim, but it could have. It came from a couple of his colleagues at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre and Jerry Callahan at the Niagara Symphony. Performing and live arts are facing revenue loss and a lack of audience confidence. Can you tell us how the province is working to support this sector?
Sure. Well, we've made unprecedented, really unprecedented investments into the arts and culture sector throughout this pandemic. For a conservative government, I might say, because I know what y'all said about us when we came in, but and I only say that in jest. We really truly value those iconic institutions. We recognize how important they are for people's social and mental well-being. We also recognize how integral you are to your local economy. And so that's why we have allowed and encouraged those organizations to be part of the business grants. That's why they were, if they were not-for-profit, eligible for our Ontario Trillium Foundation. The Ontario Arts Council has seen an increase under my watch every year since I've been minister, and including a one-time $25 million investment into some of the key and iconic institutions that we have across the province. We also invest heavily in the institutions which have had to be stabilized within our own ministry. And I'm sure David and James won't want me to say this, but I'm going to anyway. Well, you might want me to. They used to bring in $120 million in revenues maybe a year. Never required any assistance from the government until this pandemic. And so we need to make sure that they're stabilized, and all of you are stabilized until you're back on your feet, and creating memories, creating music, and creating, let's be frank, money. You're doing a great job. And so we'll try to do that, and we're going to try and make sure that we share that information, as I said earlier, about the confidence. So having confidence to stay in a hotel or eat in a restaurant or go to a live event is pretty critical. And the live event piece too, it could be the Toronto Symphony, or it could be going to the Arkells, or it could be going to a live theater performance. It could be going to any type of activity where there is a large volume of people in a very high touch environment. Is probably going to require a bit more of a confidence boost in the long term. And from the early days, I think we were looking at about 20% of the population is very, very hesitant to get back and may never to their old routines and habits.
Thank you. That's a good answer.
But that means 80% might.
That's right.
Let's be positive here.
David, were you happy to hear her say that out loud or not?
It's public information.
Yeah.
You could be a diplomat.
Now, that was a non-answer. Although we hope we have seen the last of the pandemic, in the absence of a vaccine that could prevent the spread of the virus, we must prepare ourselves for new variants and new restrictions at this fall and winter, even while we hope that they do not come to pass. Wow. Can you give us any details or contingency plans to sustain Ontario's culture, tourism, and sports industry if that should happen?
Yeah, I will say this. When the pandemic first hit, and we started seeing things out of Wuhan in China in December of 2019, my background is strategic intelligence, just so you know. And so, I did my master's coursework at American Military University, so I was watching all that stuff, and we were having conversations about it. And I started in, I think, early January, was it, Susan, preparing the ministry for a SARS-like event. I did not know it was going to go on for 2 years. We prepared for SARS, and we did all of the background. So when it finally was hit, I think, David, I probably started the meetings in January with everybody, all of the agencies' interactions. We were only meeting maybe bi-weekly, and then we had to meet weekly. And so we have a ton of lessons learned, and unfortunately, the ministry, although it was hardest hit, and we had the big Rolling Stones concert, and there was all that excitement around how to get people back after SARS, this was the entire nation, the entire world. So you're dealing with that. It lasted for 2 years, not for 6 months, and we really started documenting everything, which they hadn't done previously. So I actually put in a lot of calls to a lot of previous politicians from the era. But who remembers my ADM, who became my DM, Kevin Finnerty? Yeah, what a great guy. Kevin was actually the director of communications for the Ministry of Health during SARS. So I was able to really lean on him to understand what it would mean. And so we have really gone through a lot of this, and I created 14 ministerial advisory committees at the beginning, and then we whittled that down to 10 this past year, and we're going to continue to work on lessons learned. And the benefit we have now, that I don't think we had during SARS, but it is really having the Royal Ontario Museum working with their global partners, all the museums in the world, finding out, especially when they were being hit before we were, what were the protocols there. The Toronto Raptors were at the NBA were the first to close, but they were the first to have protocols in place to move forward. So we benefited from having the Toronto Raptors here. The NHL benefited from having the Toronto Raptors. And so, working with those types of entities. Same things with our galleries, same things with our Canadian live music, working with our friends and partners in Germany and other places. We were able to create jurisdictional scans we studied each and every day that helped us pivot and plan and hopefully get us out.
Now, you made an interesting comment there, and I think it's important that SARS was very much a Toronto, Ontario-focused issue, where this pandemic is worldwide, and we're all having the same challenges throughout the world. So that leads comfortably into this question. Ontario is trying to compete in a crowded marketplace for tourists. How can we distinguish ourselves internationally and build our status as a destination? That might go to what Destination Ontario is doing, what DC is doing, all of those questions.
Yeah, so first thing is the staycation tax credit. The first year, we were able to have a bit of a summer and everybody stayed home. The second summer, everybody went back to the same places that they were the year before, because for the first time they rediscovered their own backyard. And then I wanted the staycation tax credit for the third year. Well, I would have liked it for the first year, but it just kept going. But now I think people have gone to their favorite location in Ontario that they probably 10 years ago wouldn't have. So now they're making family traditions, or the girls' weekend out, or the guys' fishing trip. And so we really wanted to create that habitual component of staying in Ontario and keeping some of the money here by Ontarians. So we were running a Rediscover, Reconnect campaign in the ministry. The second thing, and I think I addressed it in my speech, is wherever you come from in Niagara, and maybe even Hamilton, you guys are competitors, you're collaborators. And if you want to be world class, we all have to rise up together. And that to me, Tim will know this, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the trails that I want to create. So I don't think he competes with Stratford. I think he's a collaborator with Stratford. And so I want to have, at the end of the day, a trail system of some of the great playhouses. They're not all going to be Stratford and Shaw. They might be the small little theater in a rural community, but we need to weave that. That's why we've invested $500,000 in Canadian live music to create music cities, of which now Niagara Falls is one. It's why we're investing into the Ontario Culinary Craft Tourism Alliance, so that we can promote Ontario products and get people to want to be the foodie that comes to a certain region, maybe that is Niagara. These are the types of trails that we're investing in, and I don't think my ministry should do it. I think my ministry should fund the industry association or organization that has the expertise to do that and develop it and figure it out. But we need to plant the seed and the idea. And so that's what we're doing. And so that's why I think we're actually going to be in a better position than anywhere else in North America. That's why I think we're going to be a premier tourism destination in Ontario post-pandemic, because we are going to have a crowded market. But I say this all the time, Jim Diodati told me, I think week 1 of this pandemic, take this time to plan, don't panic. And I give him a ton of credit for my mentality in this pandemic. And some days when it was really hard to face any of you on a webinar, and I just wanted to bang my head and go, not again, how do I face them? Is really, I just started to think about what we could do on the other side. Because there's always light at the end of a tunnel, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're there now. God willing.
So, Jim, does that mean we have you to blame for 2 years of planning? Right. When you said take some time, did you mean 2 years, or did you mean 2 weeks or 2 months? I think we've all heard your message loud and clear, Minister, about collaboration and collaborators. I'm proud to be here with the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce, and certainly in the tourism industry, as we look around the room and we look at Shaw Festival and Delwith Wineries, and we look at the beach communities, and we look at everything that exists here in Niagara, from the spectacular falls behind me to the attractions from the river to the lake. And I said this 25 years ago when I first came to the community, that tourists don't know the difference of where weeds of visible lines are on a map, so we know who picks up the garbage. When somebody's going to Orlando, they don't care if Disney's in the municipality of Lake Buena Vista or Kissimmee or Orlando. They're just going there. They don't know where these invisible boundaries are. There's huge opportunity for collaboration here in Niagara, and we've heard you loud and clear, and that you expect it. And I think that you can be assured that the people in this room want to work together to make sure we are successful, you perceive us as successful, and you feel confident investing in us because we're doing the right things.
Well, you're expensive friends to have, as I said.
Yeah. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask one of my own questions, speaking of expensive.
Derek, do we have the money for him?
I know that 2 of your agencies are convention centers in Ontario, so you are well versed in this industry. I would believe that particularly when it relates to seasonality and some of the challenges we're going to have filling the gaps at business events is a significant opportunity, not just for Niagara, but really for Ontario. And as I look at that opportunity, and as I look at the spectacular destination we're in, and yes, you've heard me, and that's why you may mention it, but the best meeting destinations in the world, the best business destinations, are also the best leisure destinations, whether it be Orlando or Las Vegas or San Francisco or anything else. So as I look at your ministry and I look at the provincial government, what plans do you have to help the business events community as we emerge from this pandemic?
So great question. So similar to when I say we invest in with the Reconnect Festival and Event Program, you invest $1, you get 21 back. I would say it's arguable you would probably do a lot better if we had a time-limited approach to some business type of support. We are looking at that, recognizing that major international events, whether that is sport hosting or business, I just don't write a check to you, Noel, and say, okay, get this convention in this fiscal year. You're fighting for a convention that's 2, 3, 8 years out. Same with our major sporting events. So we have to do a significant amount of planning to figure out how we coordinate that. And it's absolutely incredibly important. And I can tell you that. So the largest convention center in the country, obviously, is the Mtcc, which is one of our agencies. We've been stabilizing them to keep lights on. I'm not, we do the same thing with SHOP because we need to.
That's public information, David.
All of it's public. It's all public. But it's important because at the end of the day, think about this. If you have a convention, and I'm not talking about, we come down here for our Progressive Conservative Convention, we're here for 2 days and we're whatever.
And thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's always, we always do it. It's like the coldest time, by the way, Patrick.
It's election, that's why.
Yeah. It's always super cold. But anyway, what's really kind of cool about some of these bigger conventions, when you're especially attracting international audiences, they come for the business, but they also stay for the leisure, and they bring their families. So it's interesting. They stay longer, there's more people, and they spend more. And so I think it's a really important thing for us to do. So yes, obviously, between the two convention centers, I know they're collaborating because we're all working together in an unprecedented way now, something we've never done before. But I think it extends to your convention center. I think it extends to Windsor's convention center. I think it extends to so many other places across the province. In some of those niche markets, and how do you build on that? And I think that there's a role for the RTOs to play. There's a role for Destination Ontario to play, but I think there's a role for political leadership there as well. And I think it's something I have to bring to my colleagues so that they understand how integral the success of your convention center is to the rest of this community.
Thank you. Mishka, how's our timing?
Good one. 3 hours over.
Good.
We're just over? Okay, great. Dino, thank you very much for having us here. Seriously, I know you've been thanked, but I am a big promoter and fan of in-person events, whether it's a Heritage Classic hockey game or a meeting at the Marriott Hotel, Fallsview Spa Convention Center. We're happy to be here. Mishka, thank you very much for the in-person event. And your minister, thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, I'm getting a plug in. Every time I come here, thanks to April Jeffs, I always stop off. Is it Thorold or Welland? April, is it Thorold or Welland? Thorold to the post office. So earrings, necklace, and my smocker, all from the Niagara region. From Shannon to Cerro. And I've been coming there. I've been going there for 5 years now because of April.
Minister MacLeod? Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for TD for bringing us all together and making it possible as being our title sponsor for today. And I am, for closing remarks, I'm going to pass the mic over, but I think they might have to use your mic, to our MVP for Niagara West, Sam Wustov. Here you go, Sam. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you so very much. It's very good to be here with everyone once again. I can feel the energy. People are excited to get out, and I know people are excited to see the minister, to hear from the minister about what the future holds here in Niagara. Minister, as you spoke so eloquently about the enthusiasm, the optimism, the energy that the people here in this room bring together to ensure that Niagara's future is that much better than our past. And you spoke about our past. We have a strong history here. We have amazing private partnerships who have been working with political leadership at all levels and frankly from all political parties. The minister has spoken obviously about Chair Bradley who walked in. I'm a proud progressive conservative. Chair Bradley's a proud Liberal. I know that the current MPP for this area is a New Democrat, but we all work together because we understand that Niagara is stronger together. When we speak as one voice, when we can speak to the issues that impact the people here in this room and the many, many, many people that you represent who work with your organizations from the communities that you speak to. But no one speaks louder for Niagara at the cabinet table than Minister MacLeod. I'm just so thankful to serve alongside someone who's come down here, I think almost every month. I'm sure it's not quite that often, but who has been open to seems like it. Well, we love having you here. Someone who has been open to hearing about ideas, ways we can improve, ways we can work together, and who has brought a substantial amount of money into this area and will continue these investments going forward. So I want to thank you. I want to thank our hosts for having us here today, the GNCC and what they do, Dino, you and your team. And I know you spoke about some of the unique treasures that we have here due to our microclimate. So I want to make sure that before you leave, you do have the opportunity to take some of the unique product with you.
You know it so well.
And enjoy it with your sister. And make sure that you have a very wonderful time here in Niagara. Thank you all so much.